Have you checked the children?
Hi, I'm Chucky. Wanna play?
Sometimes that is better.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Howdy folks, welcome back to the Horror Show. I'm Robert Duell.
And you got Jaime and Fuego here. Myself and my fellow metal man are returning for another patron request. This is from our buddy Sam Glass, who actually another recent recommendation of his being the special made my top 6 of the year. I hope that we can review it at some particular point. But shout out to Sam and his constant, just
Weirdness
support of us
of
and
beautiful
weirdness.
movies. I love
This
you,
is-
Sam.
This is another weird one.
Yeah.
And yet, this is a weird one that I've gone on record a few different times, despite us never properly reviewing it, about how it's not just my favorite from Frank Henenlotter, who also did the Basket Case series. He did Frankenhooker.
Yep.
He's done some weird stuff, man, but I really appreciate his very grimy, exploitation, almost grindhousey sort of approach.
I was just thinking about this. It's very the grindhouse horror. It's a B- grindhouse horror versus the B movies.
As far as if the B stands for budget, then yes, and that is unfortunately one of the detriments at times of this movie. But I feel like compared to Basket Case, this one had a lot more to say. But since I've talked about it before, I gotta toss the proverbial ball over to Robert and get some thoughts, because you've never seen this one before. This request.
Yeah, this was the first time watching it and everything, and wow, this movie was bonkers off the damn wall.
Yeah.
I will just definitely say, like, out of his work, this was more enjoyable than any of the other stuff I'd watched, especially with like Basket Case. And that was, again, if you guys haven't watched our review, like, we have that up and everything, I believe, already.
At least on the Patreon.
I believe on the Patreon and everything like that. And that was another first watch for me. This one was very much more enjoyable. I especially like the fact of the creature human dynamic kind of thing, because he basically turned him into, in a sense, he kind of turned him into a junkie just to leech off him. Yeah, for this psychedelic drug thing. And that was, I think, one of the biggest highlights of this movie is the color tones that he used and how he shot some of the scenes.
Yeah.
It was very, very effective. So, like, overall thoughts, very enjoyable. This, I think, is probably his best movie. It's been a long time since I've watched Frankenhooker, so I can't...
So you had seen Frankenhooker before?
I have seen Frankenhooker before. It was been a long time.
I feel like that one is a lot more tongue-in-cheek comedy at times,
From what I remember,
the Bride of Frankenstein aspect and the sadness you kind of get.
Well,
that's one I need to revisit.
It felt more like a mashup of like Reanimator, like the schlockiness of like you're getting like your
Stuart Gordon.
Yeah, I would say that, but also kind of like your Universal Monsters kind of aspect and stuff like that.
With the Bride aspect.
Yeah, and like, it was a nice little twist on that.
Yeah, this is a movie that I just rewatched it this morning, even though I own it, and I've owned it in a couple different incarnations, especially on like these deluxe DVD releases with like improved picture and sound and behind the scenes and all that other stuff. I still contend it is Henenlotter's most accomplished. I can understand why for some, especially with the look of this like slug, this Elmer, depending on the spelling, which is clarified later in the film, and it has like deep, very historical sort of significance and stuff like that. But yeah, there's aspects of some of the carnage that hasn't aged very well. But this movie is trippy, in my opinion, with the drugged out sequences specifically. Whether it's like looking up at this light bulb that slowly starts to turn into an eyeball, and then the flood of the fluid next to you.
I was just about to say that. Yeah, the flooding of the room scene, like
when he's first tripping.
Like, don't get me wrong. Like, it's very dated.
Robert,
It's very dated on like the I don't want to say CG because they didn't really have CG back then.
Yeah, but like it looked like some strange sort of stop motion because they used some of that in Basket Case.
But at the same time, it's still nice. Like it's still visually appealing, and it's kind of hard to do sometimes, especially with the lower budget older movies, especially like on these creature, alien, whatever kind of movies, whatever you want to really classify that.
Yeah.
What the hell was his name again?
Elmer,
yes.
But it's spelled ELMER, but then they clarify the spelling as being Aylmer later, where it's like Ayl. I don't know. Let's not get into that.
Basically, it's
sort of
one big
chicanery.
ailment.
Yeah, that could be contended. This is a movie that I watched and enjoyed in my early 20s in film school, and then I ate psychedelic mushrooms and enjoyed it significantly more so based on some of those certain circumstances. Watching it in a completely sober frame of mind as I did today, I can see some of the criticism from it's only 80 minutes as far as overall thoughts goes, but it does feel like it drags, and the tropes of the like girlfriend who feels neglected, and the brother just waiting in the wings sort of situation. There are some tropes here, but I feel like one of the things that, beyond from a visual standpoint, the stuff that I dig what it has to say about about addiction and about just the detachment that comes from it. And so this, compared to Basket Case, which I don't necessarily think had anyone, this felt like a much more mature filmmaker with something deeper to say.
Well, especially because obviously around like the 70s, 80s, they were having like the big, we've always had the drug epidemics and everything like that, but again, we had like that resurgence between the 70s and 80s, so I definitely feel like that was his kind of commentary on it.
Oh yeah,
most definitely. And it was fun.
There is some fun and some dark humor to this movie.
There is,
sure.
and there is
as we segue into the story,
dude. Yeah, so just real quick, though, there was this one scene with this hooker that
I don't even think she was a hooker. She's just a chick that he encounters in the punk club.
Oh,
Remember?
that's what it was. Oh,
yeah.
That's what it was.
He was
Yeah,
tripping,
sorry.
And I actually did like the weird song that
the
new wavy punk
yeah,
band was
yeah,
playing.
the song was funny, but man, that
moody.
scene was messed up.
It was. Yeah.
I think that's gonna ruin that activity for both men and women. I think.
Jeez, man. And
just to keep it at that.
And to give some parasitic context, to where we get to that scene and a few other instances, is that the movie basically starts with this older couple who they appear very well to do, with a home full of what appear to be ancient artifacts and like masks from different cultures all over the world and stuff, and they have a fiending for something that goes missing right away, that he has brought these brains home from the butcher, presumably to give his food to. And whatever this was, whether a sentient being or whatever, it's gone, and they freak out, and they in turn go into like drug withdrawal. They're foaming at the mouth and all that nastiness. And this thing that does turn out to have some sort of, it's self-conscious, it has just conscientiousness, I guess, and it's self-aware, and it's basically, there's a lot of phallicness to this story, but it's like a weird psychedelic worm that can talk and is hungry for brains and can administer like a trippy toxin directly to like the spinal, like the brainstem, I guess.
Well,
and
the crazy thing is, like, when they were showing that and everything, so basically the needle is like shoved literally all the way up through,
like
and
right
then
into the
right up
brainstem.
over the damn brain, and then it's secreting this venom.
The blue fluid that they
Yeah,
show,
which-
and like the pulsating of the brain as
Which was
the
cool,
interactions
but
transpire.
No drug I'm fucking do.
Yeah,
Fuck
no,
that.
I'm
But
with
the
you
pre-
there, man.
But again, it was interesting, and even still, like, you haven't really seen a creature that, like, even on the B movie side, you don't really see that.
And it's even goofier about like some of the dialogue that they write for this thing, as you kind of find out, without getting super spoilery, that this older couple was basically just fiending and using it for its power, and just kind of almost keeping it trapped and at bay. And whereas it turns into more of a symbiotic situation with this guy who is on the down and outs with his girlfriend, his brother living there, and it's like, oh, I'm gonna have you actually take me out and find me real victims instead of eating animal brains or whatever, of a less developed intelligence. Maybe it's sweeter, it has more power or satisfaction, whatever. And that's really, it turns into this disillusion of relationship, and then embracing of the psychedelic detachment, and then finding, victim at a car crushing dump sort of place, then at the punk bar that Robert mentioned, and
that was honestly the I want to say the worst scene, but that was just the hardest to watch because
Yeah.
like that's just wrong.
And there's some stuff in a bathhouse kind of place later on.
Oh, yeah.
This weird super seedy apartment, way more so than the one that he was staying at. More so akin to the character from Basket Case, who makes a guest appearance on the subway train.
Did he?
Sitting there with his basket, and it's a fun little nod. Same character.
I didn't even notice that.
Because it's for just a quick little flash, but it shows that even Henenlotter in the 80s was doing a shared universe sort of situation.
See, I like that. That's cool.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna assume then he's gonna throw Frankenhooker and some of the other little quirky ones in that same universe.
Yeah.
So that was story. So acting real quick.
Yeah.
So acting, nobody necessarily outshined anybody, but it was definitely an improvement upon some of his other films and some of the other actors that he's gotten.
Yeah, much more competent than Basket Case, that's for sure. Aside from maybe a
Especially
scene
Basket,
or
yeah.
two.
Yeah. Don't get me wrong. Like there was some pretty hammy line delivery, especially between the older brother. I think the older brother was one of our weaker actors in this. And then we might have had a couple. I think it was a couple people on the subway, and then one of his roommates in the apartment. But for the most part, it's basically you're gonna get what you're gonna get with this type of movie on your acting.
Yeah, some of the most interesting acting for this, in my estimation, is the voice acting we get from this person who voices the
slug thing?
the slug parasite.
Yeah, well,
He doesn't necessarily talk.
Yeah,
the way
but
that you would
that's the funny
expect,
thing too is like how they ended up doing the voice for this. He's very like Oxford proper in his dialect, and that was interesting because I was kind of half expecting like half sentences and things like that with this creature.
Less defined intellect, but he's drinking them brains.
But yeah, exactly.
He's eating
Yeah,
brains, man.
exactly.
I
And-
eat your brains and gain your knowledge. So.
But also too is like, and that goes back to like we'll touch on this when we go to like effects and things like that. But it was just on with him eating the brains, he had that enlarged brain in himself for the slug design. So which would kind of make more sense on why he would be more.
It was
more,
almost like super forehead, like
Yeah,
in
he was
that,
more refined in
to
his
serve
intellect.
man, where the aliens they like the jawline and everything was regular, but then their brains were like all super huge and much more just elongated. I guess you could maybe say.
What was it? Jimmy Neutron?
That too.
Yeah, his
exactly.
little buddy and everything.
It's just trying to contain all of that smarts, man.
God, I miss that show.
Yeah.
Age.
Oh man, yeah. It leaves us all behind eventually.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, I also loved how the delivery of the dialogue for Elmer changed as there was some resistance from I'm trying to remember if it was Mike, what the name of the main.
It was Mike. Yeah, because it became like he's gun ho, he's going along with everything that Elmer's saying.
Then he starts to realize especially after he encounters that older couple who are still going through withdrawals from not having his toxin around and stuff. That's very interesting to me. And also when he's super tripped out on the stuff and he's like, "Oh, are you on like some weird combination of heroin and acid?" And you're just like,
and then that kind of goes.
Sold it well, in my opinion.
Most definitely, and that goes back to like kind of what you were saying earlier on the like this being kind of that commentary movie of like drug addiction and things.
Totally is.
So it's that on he gets to a stage on that rabbit hole that he's fallen into of the realization on how deep he's gotten into this drug, and he's trying to cut it out. He's trying to go cold turkey, but it's again you're fighting with that addiction, and it's that real thing. So honestly, again, what he was saying, it was acted out very well.
Yeah. I personally contend that as well. And there's an ending which we can't mention, but if you remember what happens in the ending and how there is a picture off to our left, which is a little similar in that regard of a head being just like ripped up
I still have
from
no
too much
fucking idea.
stimulation or whatever, but
Is that what it was? Because I still have no idea what the hell
it was
happened
ambiguous
with
in the
that.
writing department, and it was where this movie for me. Have you seen Altered States? It's another 80s psychedelic movie that came quite a few years before this. It was
I feel like I have, but I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, it was about taking like psychedelic, like man-made substances and deprivation chambers and stuff like that. The name of the actor is totally eluding
We were just
me.
talking about this last week, weren't we?
Yeah, I talk about that movie a lot too. There's a couple 80s movies that deal with this sort of psychedelia that I believe it's William Hurt, if I remember correctly, who's in Altered States. I could be wrong.
I think
But
that's, yeah.
it's another one where it goes into a kind of nonsensical finale, but acted well and sold me, at least if I was, if my mind was expanded enough. But as far as effects goes, this is one where the design of Elmer I like until he's like opening his mouth up, and that's where the budgetary limitation is very similar to like what we saw in Basket Case, with what Mordred, I want to say his name is, or I could be totally wrong.
No, I don't think that was his name.
I don't think it was either, so don't quote me on that one.
Yeah, go watch our review for
Belial.
Basket Case.
Belial,
That's
Belial.
what it was. Belial, yes.
Mordred. Anyway, so
Samsonite.
I was way off. Yeah, Schwemmy, Swanson. Yeah, man, but Henenlotter still does a lot with a very small budget, and those scenes of like a room flooding, those scenes of especially some of the lighting stuff where you see from Mike's perspective where he's on the subway trying to talk to the girlfriend he's estranged from, and just some of the weird reds and blues and everything that we get. I was sober watching it this time, and I still felt like kind of tripped out. So
no, most definitely, and like again too, like that kind of goes back to like with our actor who played Mike. Wasn't necessarily the best actor, but he did well enough to sell that addiction and the come down of it during those scenes, especially like what Fuego was just talking about on the subway when he's talking with his girlfriend, ex-girlfriend, something or other, whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, man.
So yeah, and it was pretty much on the practical effects and that.
Yeah, we
Music,
had already covered a lot of it.
Yeah.
It's got a very late 80s
music.
kind of synthy,
I dug
trippy
the shit
score,
out of this music, honestly.
which you and I both enjoyed
Yep.
the musical approach for Basket Case as well.
Yeah.
It's got that trippy synthiness to it. It felt like it was arranged a little bit better here for me, and also just the sound design does play a part with these booming synths.
Yep.
And just orchestrating the just tripping aspect of where he's under the influence.
The levels that he's reaching on each. He's getting one little peak, and then he'll plateau, and then he's getting that other little peak as the stimuli starts getting deeper and deeper.
Yeah, for anybody who has experienced those sort of psychedelic and just instances, it's very much about the peaks and valleys and the ebb and flow of the sound and the vibrance of it a lot of the time, whether it was the score or just some of those like just panning oral sort of flourishes. It was tastefully done, and that's where I'm not going to go as far with a guy like Frank Henenlotter, as much as I enjoy this movie, as saying visionary, but very, very capable and very pronounced, and he knew what he was trying to do. And there was more sophistication in this sophomore release from him for me.
I would definitely agree, and that's going back to he has a very unique vision on how he wants to present his movie, and he knows how he wants to present it. And again, like it goes back to art's subjective.
True.
And
Word up.
Yeah, and you can see his style and how he changed from like even how he filmed Basket Case to this to Frankenhooker, and there was another one. It was like something biology or whatever is another weird one he had.
That's the weird one about it was kind of a Romeo and Juliet,
It was something
Bonnie and
like that,
Clyde sort
yeah.
of craziness, but it had like a weird sex angle to it.
Yeah.
If I remember, I have seen that, and I think it was his last directorial film. I can't say I liked it that much.
Because that was mid-90s, wasn't it?
It was maybe even later into the 90s, like 97, 98,
Okay.
something like that. I know he hasn't made a feature in quite a while at this particular point, but he does still go and showcase some of his stuff, like, Frankenhooker, Basket Case, and this film specifically. In closing, I think that there is something punk rock about going and championing something as, dare I say, deranged as this. I don't know if I'd love it as much as I did when I was a lot younger, but I still really appreciate this and feel like there's a lot more going on than a lot of people may necessarily give it credit for. And it's a movie that I like showing the people for the first time and just seeing how they react to it, especially my homies within the horror, sci-fi, thriller, exploitation cinema, as Frank likes to call this as. So
What's funny is like when we're talking about this, I kind of want to go back and do a rewatch of Frankenhooker.
Oh, I feel like I
haven't
have to
watched.
at this
I haven't
point.
watched that in so long.
Just to see the transition from him
Yep.
from a stylistic standpoint, because I do remember very specifically that whole kind of more remorseful, sad third act where some self-awareness kicks back in with the character. But who knows? Sam Glass or anybody else, if you are patron supporters here on the Horror Show and you would like to hear us continue with Frank and his very strange catalog of films, definitely let us know so we can check out
Indubitably.
Frankenhooker.
So yeah, that'll be. I think that's gonna about do it for this here review of Brain Damage.
Yes.
So thank you again, Sam. And if you guys want to become a patron, links down here in the description. Hit that like button, hit that little bell to keep up with all of us, see our pretty little faces. So other than that, I've been Robert Duell.
Gracias, up and Jaime, and Fuego.
And remember,
Stay scared.